With its wide savannas, expansive wetlands, and wild, untamed jungle, the continent is a hotbed for the world's most precious resource, life. Through this short documentary, we'll explore the myriad of creatures that pepper the landscape of the greatest region in the world. Splice. A majestic and patient species, they trudge along, but their caution is ultimately rewarded. Just look at them go. Oh, the howl from Grabs as his team locks in Annie top. Obviously spooked, the fear on his face is tangible. And there's the Garen. Oh, that's a very unhappy monkey. In spring, the Origin butterflies migrate to the north, to Rotterdam. While in summer, many other species will go on a journey to Athens, Origin remained locked in their cocoon. They've assured us their metamorphosis will be complete for playoffs. We'll see. And finally, an all too common sight in the LEC, SK feeding. Millions of LEC fans have gathered here on a tumultuous forest floor. They are ready for playoffs to commence, supporting not only their favourite teams, but also their favourite players. From Rotterdam to Athens, the LEC journey will continue.
Hey buddy, what you doing? Okay then.
Welcome to Berlin, Germany, home of the LEC Safari. Week 8 has arrived and the stakes couldn't be higher as each team has just 4 games left to decide their fate in the postseason. Misfits Gaming are clinging on to a sliver of hope, while Schalke and Nulfear have their eyes set on playoffs. Hello, everybody. I am Quickshot, joined today by Ender and Froskurinn. As a South African, I am a huge fan of safaris and seeing animals in their natural habitat.
You're looking at peak EU performance.
And there is nothing else to argue. Well, listen, over the last 2 weeks, we'll be keeping you updated with everything you need to know in the race for playoffs. Let's take a look at how the teams are stacking up, with G2, Fnatic, and Splice already locked into the postseason. And we need to see who's going to be chasing them and who's going to be finishing off those last 3 playoff spots.
The 2 most exciting races for me are between Fnatic and Splice to see who's actually going to get that ticket directly into the roadshow, as well as Vitality versus Schalke. I know people are looking at Origin, but I think Origin will actually be able to cruise into playoffs based on their strength of schedule.
Yeah, and people ask, like, why does it matter 5th place versus 4th place? They're both going to be going into playoffs, assuming their current form. But really, getting 4th place is important because it means you can dodge the 3rd place finisher. Because the team that ends 3rd can pick between 5th or 6th who they want to play in the first round of playoffs. If you get 4th place, you dodge a potential Fnatic or Splice.
Well, let's see what Vitality can do. They're currently 2-0 after last week's matches. And the UK underdogs XL, they are still in the race. I really got bought into the excitement last week, but the biggest story here is, of course, Vitality, as you've mentioned, Frost.
And it's really important, you know, for me when I look at Vitality and XL a bit more of a Cinderella story, but Vitality actually could go the distance and take the spot away from Schalke. I think it'll actually come down to the match between Schalke and Vitality that defines it.
Yeah, that comes all the way in week 9, so we have a long way to go before we get to that. I also think it's important to bring up Misfits have made some pretty big roster changes themselves. The trend continues for this squad with a new bot lane this week. Hansama is back, and their new support, DOS, will be playing for them. Now, DOS is a player that actually was in that EU Masters final last split between SK and Misfits. He was on the other side, though, so he was competing against Neon and Hiva, and now it's his chance to try and replace him.
And I'm just excited to the fact that Misfits continue to kind of diversify their their playstyle. We know that Dandan and Leader are like hard carry players and that they were playing through them. You know, Dandan when he gets a hold of his Jax, Leader, an assassin player. But now also having Hansama in there, you have like a trident capability of this team that they could pick any lane and carry through it.
Well, let's see if it helps them out. We will be playing on patch 9.15 with the Iron Revenant Mordekaiser making his return to the Rift. There's only 2 weeks left in the summer split, and we want to take a closer look at what will decide the playoff race. Now, there are 3 key factors that we want to talk about.
Nailed it.
Fnatic's drafts, Inspired on Olaf, as well as Origin's form. So let's start by talking about Fnatic and their champion. Ocean's not the right word. How about their champion?
Smaller.
Puddle. The Fnatic champion Puddle.
Nice. Yeah, the champion Puddle being probably Lease in the jungle, Aatrox top lane, a Twisted Fate or a Corki in the mid lane. There's a set formula that Fnatic almost always go for, and you can rely on them to pick those types of champions in draft.
And I think it's really important to underline that Fnatic are playing these champions not because they can't play anything else, but because these signature picks allow them to do their style. Camp mid. They camp mid all the time. It is constantly either Whippo or Broxa or Hilly that are flying into Nemesis lane, which is why the Karma and the Ezreal picks are so important. It allows Reckless to be self-sufficient, that he can just sit back, farm, push the waves, and Hilly on the likes of Pyke or his Rakan can start blitzing towards that mid lane with Broxa.
But there is a fair amount of concern with Fnatic's tendencies to try to go for this type of style, because we saw in their game against G2, all of a sudden you have Rakan and a Pyke banned away. Those are the two playmaking supports from Hill saying, well, newsflash, he was just running it down in that game, and all of a sudden the pieces start to fall apart. So if you can come in with a strong plan to counter what Fnatic like to go for, you can definitely pick up wins.
Same picks, same draft, same order. The depth in champion pool potentially holding Fnatic back. And talking about depth in champion pool, can Inspired do anything on a champion not named Olaf? Look, when Rogue pick up wins, Inspired is the man leading the charge, and very regularly it is on the Berserker. So let's talk about Inspired and his importance to the Rogue squad.
It's just so important that Inspired has agency, that he's able to duel out the enemy jungler, that he's able to get through his jungle very quickly in terms of farm and then make impact onto the map. So he's never going to get Olaf. It should be permabanned away from him. If you get it, you know that you have some sort of trap set up for this Olaf pick. So instead, Rogue needs to figure out what the other pick is to allow Inspired to do the same thing for his team.
The struggle is, I'm not sure if there is a pick that can do the exact same thing for Rogue, because when they do go for this Olaf, it's usually on blue side where they can first pick it for him, and then you have a strong bot lane duo that can help him invade the blue buff early on and continue to make repeat plays inside of the enemy jungle. On any other champion, no other champion can smash the enemy jungler as hard as Olaf can in the early game, so it really narrows what they can actually try to do.
And let's be clear, Rogue's playoff chances are very dire right now. They have to face both G2 and Fnatic, so it's a very tough strength of schedule. So it is truly a miracle run if they were able to grab it. Origin is just, I think, a single win ahead of them right now, so it feels very close, but it is a very uphill climb.
The strength of schedule is something that's important to talk about because, as you mentioned, the race for that 6th spot between Rogue and Origin is heating up, and it's about time that the real OG please stand up.
Please wake up.
Please stand up. I am so disappointed in our spring finalist progression throughout the summer split. After coming back from Rift Rivals, this just does not look like the same Origin.
No, they look completely different. I think a big reason why actually comes in the jungle for me. Because when I see Cold, he's been trying to pick up the Jarvan a lot recently, trying to play very heavy through the early game. I've never looked at Cold and been like, this is the guy that camps his lanes. He's not like super snowballing the early game. Usually he's a control style jungler. It has been a very different look from Origin recently, and it's really causing them a lot of issues because they're going for these 50-50 fights that they're simply not winning.
And I know that we just talked about Inspired and what Olaf means for him. I think that's actually an issue with Cold right now. It feels like when you take away the Sejuani, which has been permabanned against Origin, and then you deny the Jarvan by either picking it away from them, it means that Cold goes to Skarner when he has the option. He tried to look for the Olaf, it just doesn't sync for him. And so it's about, yeah, he can play the control style, but because they aren't able to play such a strong dueling jungler, it means that you can attack them in the jungle quite easily.
Well, let's see now, because we've talked about standings, we've talked about 3 of the teams in the race for playoffs, and I challenged you two to give me your playoff predictions. But not only did I ask the experts, I also want to know what the LEC fans at home thought. So let's take a look at the first set here. So Froskurinn and Ender both have G2 in first, Splice in second over Fnatic. But if I recall, Froskurinn, didn't you say Splyce are not going to play second?
Yeah, I actually said that to Xerxes' face on Euphoria, but I went back, I watched the tape, and I just feel like the current form of Fnatic is leaving me with a lot of question marks. This run-up into playoffs, I think it's about fine-tuning form for Fnatic. I want to see a bit more variations of their style. I think the style that they play works very well, but it's kind of a feast or famine for me. So Splyce is now who I'm airing on.
Faith and confidence in Splyce. This is interesting.
I mean, really what it comes down to me, it's like battling like consistency versus like peaks. And I think Fnatic can have higher peaks than Splyce can currently.
I agree with that.
But how these two teams have been playing on the back half of the split, Splyce is the rock and they should get second.
Well, listen, I did want to reference some of the fans at home because from @Froskurinn,
Nailed it.
we've got a prediction here. G2 Fnatic, then Splyce, Schalke, OG, and Vitality.
Okay.
So Fnatic over Splyce. Tell the fans why they're wrong.
I don't care about the Fnatic versus Splyce one. Like, I understand, we have a lot of Fnatic fans out, that's fine. I actually want to talk about Schalke versus Vitality. I think people are sleeping on Vitality's strength of schedule. It's actually quite easy to walk into playoffs, and because they've won more games on the back half of the split than on the front half, if they beat Schalke because they had the upset victory over G2, Vitality could very easily take the spot.
Ooh. Yeah, Vitality, they also like, their hardest theoretical game coming up is going to be Vitality, or rather, Fnatic in week 9.
It's actually Vitality.
It's actually Vitality. But it is Fnatic, and I think that is a very winnable game for this team.
Okay, next one. This is the what I want to look at is down at the bottom. From Erase YD. G2 Splyce Fnatic Vitality. Erased, that would be much smarter. Misfits in 6th, sneaking up and pipping Origin.
I was all the way with him. I was like, yes. And then I got to Misfits. I was like, no.
They have 4 wins right now. That means like they probably have to win out all their games and then also rely on other people to get losses in there. I just don't think that's very realistic.
And you don't believe in Hans Summer and DOS to turn it around?
I believe in Hansama. I've always thought Hansama's a great bot laner, but like the way this team is playing, they're trying to change their style so drastically in the last 2 weeks. Like, I don't know, I don't see it.
I think it's just indicative of trying to find a style that works. Like, this could theoretically be a last-ditch effort to try to make that playoff run, but I don't think that Misfits, if they miss playoffs, are like, oh man, you know, that was the big goal they were going for.
Exactly.
At this point, they're just trying to put out the fire.
But you're sitting there, this is fine. This is fine.
It's okay.
One last one from Burnt, actually. G2 Splyce, Fnatic, Vitality, Schalke, and Rogue.
Come on,
so
guys.
we're getting a couple of tweets, but basically that race between Rogue and Origin, we've already alluded to the strength of schedule, but it is not outside the realm of impossibility when you see the upsets that have been coming in.
Look, all I'm saying I don't think this is going to happen, but Rogue played G2 later tonight. G2 have done some interesting things in the last couple weeks.
What if we get
Can we show Quickshot right now? Can we show him?
It's actually interesting because if we get another happy game from G2 against Rogue, yes, Rogue benefit, but boy, oh boy, does Origin
Trevor,
suffer.
there's a difference between a happy game and a dumpster fire. Like, these are different things.
Well, we're going to have to find out. That will be the last game to cap it off. Just to let you guys know, these teams are fighting to make it to the LEC Summer Finals, which take us to the birthplace of sports in Athens, Greece. This is where the ancient Olympic Games were held and the first modern Olympic Games in 1896. Now, esports is coming to this historic city. Get your tickets now at riot.com/Athens. Be sure to head down to the Olympic Athletic Center of Athens ahead of the games because you can meet the players from all of the teams in the LEC Fan Festival. It is awesome. A turning point in the road to Athens is our match of the week later tonight as Splyce continue their hunt for second place.
Splyce versus Origin in spring, if you'd given me the same matchup in week 8, it would have been a fight for second place. Now, Splyce are still fighting for second. Splyce can still make it up there, but Origin are fighting for their lives.
Oh, look at the base, look at the base! Oh, just when you think it can't get wild, Schalke are here for a party!
The last 2 weeks are very important for us. For us, it's more about making playoffs.
That's not the Origin that made it to second place. That Origin, in spring, knew how they wanted to play and knew how to play on the patch.
OG have cut down Fnatic and will find themselves in a rematch versus G2.
They can excel, but we need them to find it soon. And Nukeduck needs to step up. He has to be the player that we talk about as one of the best mids in Europe.
I do feel pressure to drive this home, and I think I will be able to do it. I would like to play like more aggressive picks and look for like carry.
Deathmark comes out, captures 6. So much damage, captures dead!
In Origin we have two talented solo laners that are very flexible in their champions. In the current game state, it's all about matchups, and sometimes it's better to put your mid laner top because the champion he is on is better fit for the matchup he's gonna play top. We're just flexible, and I think it's a quality we have.
Each of them can carry the game in a way. Like I feel like Mitty has some insanely good games where he can roam, or like Nugda plays something like that and he gets fed, or even Alfari by split pushing. So like all of them can be a threat in a way. But to be honest, I'm not too worried about Origin. I'm sure we can just take the win again.
Splyce will take down Origin and raise the question, who really is the third best team in Europe?
Once you hit the 40-minute mark, there's no defeating them. Splyce prove them amongst the best in the LEC.
Splyce in summer have actually shown me a lot of improvement compared to in spring. And I think if you ask any Splyce player what their expectation is in this summer split, it's second place, at least. They want to be in Athens, they want to be challenging G2, Fnatic, whoever, in those finals. They want to be in the race for the title.
I'm a person who never settles for what I am right now, and I always strive to be better. What makes me play so good is the fear of not going towards again.
I've visualized myself winning LEC many times, and it's still not happened yet, so I mean, I will keep going until it happens. I would love to go back to Worlds. If you don't have the drive to push for that, then I don't even know why you're competing. But right now we have to think about the next game. The next game will lead us into playoffs, and in playoffs anything can happen.
This game against Splyce is a turning point for Origin. If they lose here though, they're on the cusp of getting knocked out of playoffs. Traditionally you need 9 wins. A loss here means they'd have to win out the rest of the split to make it there.
This game against Origin is going to be a lot about fighting for control.
We will try to explore whatever we can.
They should expect an explosive early game from our side. We should be ahead at 15 minutes.
It's very simple. Control Cersei and we will beat Splyce.
What a fantastic video. Shout out to the guys backstage pulling that together for Splyce. This is the battle for Athens, the bye, first and second seed for Origin. This is a battle for survival. Here's our match of the week, game 4 later today.
Yeah, and it's going to be so good, too, because it's the second best team from spring against the current second best team in the league. It's Origin's kind of last chance to make a definitive statement before we get to playoffs. And, you know, as we heard Medic say in the video, like, they could just drop out if they're unable to pick up wins.
For me, it's a team Splyce that have a very strong identity. They know who they are. They know how they like to play League of Legends versus Origin, who have thrown so many different things at the wall and nothing is bouncing back at them yet. So it's like, what is your final evolution? And is it enough or is it too late to get across the finish line?
And also that final line, it's easy. Control Cersei, control the game.
Yeah, good luck.
How on earth do you control Cersei? This guy is popping off right now.
In all fairness, I will say that in terms of matchups that I'm really going to be looking towards, yes, I think it is about controlling the two junglers, making sure that you can put Cersei behind because he's so important for Splyce's early game. But just abuse Alfari. Alfari is popping off. He is the rock of this team. And against Chachi, who doesn't always take fighter versus fighter matchups, who will sometimes take a back foot for his team, I think there's exploitation if Origin want to play that way.
I don't want to see Chachi on Karma again. That's my preference. Well, look, the 2019 Summer Split has been a renaissance for the Splyce roster. They are currently in second place. And are they a real title contender? Earlier today, both of you said they are finishing second. They've got a unique play style. And I want to talk more in depth about this squad. Let's turn our attention to Mr. Splyce, Kobbe. He was there when the team made it to Worlds last back in 2016.
Yeah, and you just think about that roster, that Splyce team that actually went to the finals in 2016, took a game off of G2. It was Wunder in the top lane, Cold in the jungle, Senkux and Mickey X all around Kobbe. And all those players went their separate ways to very successful careers moving forward. It was only Kobbe that stuck with his team and has not made it back to Worlds since. But in 2019, they rebuilt the team around this player, and they finally have the talent they need to try and make a push towards that run.
And it almost felt like such a depressing line when you see Wunder and Mickey and they go on to G2 and now they're just flying through to internationals. And it's like, we thought Kobbe would be standing with us here. And Kobbe is Mr. Splyce, but for me, it's more about the intangible. You know, this Splyce roster, I haven't seen those clutch moments, like when they're given the opportunity, that they'll consistently be able to capitalize on them, except for Kobbe. I know that when push comes to shove in that Vitality game, when he had the first pick Xayah, he planted his feet and he said, not today.
Now the question is, the danger man when you look at this roster, while Kobbe is the franchise man, has to be Cersei. We heard it from Origin themselves. We've seen Cersei being one of the most influential and impressive junglers, and arguably underrated as far as fan sentiment goes. Talk to me about Xerxes.
And for such a guy who's so young, he's been playing for so long. He started playing when he was 13. He's missed out on Worlds, but gotten so close so many times, once because he was too young to compete at it. And now this is his opportunity where, okay, this iteration of Splyce has come together. I'm at the helm. I can lead the charge. And Xerxes is one of our best junglers in the LEC.
Yeah, he's like the true leader on this team, from communication in game to getting them through the early game to the points where they can be super successful. This is like the man behind the curtain that makes it all happen.
For me, he's kind of the heart. We were talking to Xerxes and Norscarin on Euphoria, and Xerxes said that Norscarin gave huge credit to Xerxes. He talked about his motivational speeches, trying to keep the confidence of the team, and that's the really big ceiling for Splyce. It's this intangible that we know that we have footage of the likes of Fnatic, of G2, that when it's game 5, do or die type of moment, that G2 and Fnatic can seize it. But I don't have tape that this iteration of Splyce can do it, but that doesn't mean that they can't.
Historically, this organization has not been able to. Schalke have pipped them in a game 5. G2 have pipped them in a game 5. Of course, it's a different set of players.
Not with these guys.
And we are heading to playoffs in which Splyce will appear. Question is in what seed, and do they have that X factor now?
That'll be the concern too, because everyone that's a Splyce fan will remember Spring Split, where they were against Fnatic, the team they're still playing against in the regular season for second place. Fnatic beat them in that best of 5. They then went to Rotterdam for that final event. Splyce were on the sidelines.
Ender, could this be the best year or split ever for Splyce?
It could be. It's a tough task against the 2016 version of Splyce, but if they could make it to finals and take games off of this G2 roster, then yes, it will be.
Okay, we'll have to find out if they can. Let's take a look at tonight's action and the 5 games on the docket. As we've alluded to and just discussed extensively, match of the week between Splyce and Origin will feature much later in the day. But when you look at teams like Vitality, Schalke, XL, Rogue, these are teams that are still fighting tooth and nail to stay alive. Frost, what matchups are you looking forward to?
I mean, I'm super excited for Excel versus Fnatic. Hyper explosive early games. My eyes are going to be on Broxah and Kadril as the featured matchup, so that's immediately where I zone in.
Yeah, I also just think, you know, we have to talk about Splyce versus Origin. We've been doing it already. Like, there's no game today that will be better than that.
Now, when you look at Schalke against Misfits, what if this Misfits with Hansama pick up a surprise win, put additional pressure on Schalke when they're looking towards this postseason? Their strength of schedule was supposed to be easy, but you can't afford any losses.
So here's the thing. Even if Misfits pick up a win here today, I cannot put my faith in this squad until they're 4-0 and back in playoffs. Like, this team has a lot of work they need to do. I need to see tape with them with 2 brand new players with only 4 games left.
I actually think this day and these particular matchups, it's more about looking across the matchup. You know, Vitality and Schalke are looking across from each other, even though their opponents are Misfits and SK, because that's, for me, where the real race is.
Yeah, we'll have to see how that plays out. And we will have regular updates from Medic in his playoffs checkup. The first one will be following game 3. Sorry, I'm hearing from production. Yeah, the prediction graphic is broken. There's a graphical issue. So we're going to be moving on. We're not going to be doing
That's never happened before.
No.
That doesn't seem right.
Oh, whoa.
Is that a 40 points Quickshot, 41 points StatSpot?
You realize that StatSpot...
You did not tell me this was going to be in there. You
okay,
told me it wasn't
let her
happening.
speak. Let her speak.
Trevor, StatSpot is a vacuum cleaner. It's a Roomba. You're losing to a Roomba.
You lost to a robot, Trev.
This, just for what's worth, this is Misfits' fault, okay? I put my faith in Misfits. They let me. This is not my fault.
And you're still doing
Look,
it.
This is, I know.
Trevor, you are the reason people are concerned that robots are going to overtake humanity. They're already doing it in the LEC.
They're going to overtake me, but nobody else, apparently. Can we move on? I'm sick of predictions.
Wait.
Our first game is, Our first game is between Schalke and Misfits. Yes, I know.
Excel, Frost?
2 teams with a lot to fight for. Misfits are at 4 wins, and they've cost me at least 10 points in the prediction game. And Ender, they're making a change. You've already talked about DOS a little bit, but what's your expectation for what Hansama and DOS will do for the squad overall?
Well, we think about Misfits in past iterations when Hansama has been in this roster. It's super focused around this bottom lane. And we already saw last week, actually, especially with Dandan in the top lane, stepping away from the split pushers like Jax. He played a game of Karma. He played a game of Gangplank. And right then, I was like, whoa, Misfits, what are you doing? You're going away from the strategy that worked for you. But it seems like it is this transition now by bringing in Hansama to play much more through your bot lane.
Yeah, but I think that it still starts in the mid lane and then rotates to the bot lane, which really puts the focus for me on the likes of Leader and Leader's champion pool in particular. This guy loves playing assassins and then looking across at Schalke, who are trying to coast into playoffs. Yeah, Abba has looked for things like the Azir. We know that he can play the Corki, but he also loves that Akali. And I am so stoked for a potential assassin v assassin matchup.
Now, the thing is, Leader is the quintessential 10-0 or 0-10 player. So in this matchup, can Schalke shut him down? Many other teams already have.
I mean, they absolutely can, and specifically for Schalke, this should not be a difficult thing for them to do, because we look at how they like to play, especially in the early game. Trick absolutely babysits Abadage in the early game. He's always pathing around mid lane. He's always trying to get kills for his mid laner. So they're used to playing the shut down the enemy mid style. Now it's just new nameplates on the other side. They should be able to repeat that.
And I think part of that is because of the champion pool and how the junglers have to interact with that. When you have all these Azirs and these Corkis just absolutely smothering the meta, how they gain priority and control over the map is through their range and their push ability. They shove the wave in, and it allows guys like Trick and Kirei to then walk into the jungle. But Kirei's not about that, because he doesn't have a guy playing Azir shoving it in. It's about ganking junglers. So this game, if we are going to have an assassin v assassin matchup, the other really important part of that is making sure that the junglers, Kirei and Trick, are playing things like Jarvan, like Elise, these junglers who can consistently and constantly gank for them.
Yeah, we've also seen Kirei go for the Xin Zhao, I believe, twice now. It's all about this strong skirmishing ability around the mid lane so that you can unlock the rest of the map. The other thing is that this could be a very real situation where we see Leader on Assassin versus Abadage Azir, because he's gone for Azir like 4 out of his last 6 games, something absurd like that. He really likes that champion, but that really limits your ability to play through side lanes if you are Schalke, because an assassin can just rock into your lane and kill you because you don't have a turret to hide underneath. You don't have that same 1v1 potential.
So it really feels like Schalke are the favorites in this matchup for a number of reasons. I want to give a little bit of percentages to this one. Frosco, what would you say the odds of a Schalke victory, looking at the team strength and also understanding the challenges with Misfits squad?
I would say about 75% that Schalke is going to take the victory here. I think it's interesting that Misfits have made this roster change, and yeah, that probably means that they're going to try to play through the bot lane. Upset and Ignar are a very particular duo. They're super strong, but I think that they're strongest in team fights, and their lane phase can actually be quite exploitable. We've seen multiple 2v2s catch the better of Upset and Ignar and kill them solo in lane, and I don't know what DOS is going to bring here, but I know that Hans Sama loves to kill people in lane, and this might throw a wrench in everyone's plans, where you're trying to take some bite or firepower away from Hans Sama to get Upset and Ignar a good lane, which means that Leader gets whatever champion he wants.
Yeah, I do like that you bring up the bot lanes too, because historically we don't see Schalke give a lot of attention down bot side, where Hans Sama, he would love to play a Draven, he would love to play a Callista, and I remember DOS from playing in that EU Masters finals. By the way, he is now our 7th out of those 10 players in the EU Masters finals to now play on the LEC stage this split, but he played a game of Soraka support.
And you loved it. I heard you talking so positively.
No, it was bad, but he likes, I do know that he did like to play some of these ranged, more lane-dominant support picks.
Now, as you can see on your screen, the standings as a reminder. For Misfits, while they are not eliminated just yet from playoffs, it is a long and difficult road. For Schalke, on the other hand, they lock in playoffs with a win here today. The question I have for you, Frosk, when we look at the performance of Schalke and we see that Vitality are hot on their heels, where do we see them ending their regular season going to playoffs?
So the thing is that Schalke still have G2 to face, I believe. And again, I think the Garen play is what will give Vitality the spot, because if we agree that they'll beat the teams beneath them and lose to the teams above them, Vitality then just need to beat Schalke, and because they have more wins on the back half of their split, they would take the spot. So for here, I mean, you can't drop any games, but Schalke, the pressure is definitely on to have a picture-perfect performance today.
And as Ender said a little bit earlier today, you absolutely want to end in 4th place so that you do not get picked by the 3rd place team going into round 1 of playoffs. It is time to kick off week 8 of the LEC Summer Split. Let's hit the Rift.